Links to my channel over at SubStars, the various other links now on Odyssey as well. Thanks everyone over there. So this is a little bit of honesty from the guy over at Polygon, where they're delicately bringing up the idea that SJWs are getting tired of woke. He says Rings of Power is introducing a moral grayness to a series that doesn't need it because moral ambiguity doesn't automatically make for a better story. That, coming from Polygon, actually means a lot. And he says, but at the end of the day, the morality of The Lord of the Rings has always been black and white, a fundamental imperative for a story whose core is simply good versus evil. Interesting. Which is exactly why it's so strange that the prequel series insists on making all the characters shades of moral gray. Well, there's a lot more to be said about this, but it's the I don't know, the horseshoe theory of woke going full woke. But if it's not nothing, none of it is based on logic. Where right-wing stories are very nationalist, very tribal, very ethno-nationalist based stories. They're organic stories. They come with perpetuating the tribe, making babies, fighting off invaders, and conquering other people. They're very natural, organic stories. That's how humans evolved, and constant wars make for better warriors. It is what it is, and SJW stories are not organic, and they're built on this foundation of sand. And so as they build on it, it starts to collapse because none of it makes sense. So they get in a situation where they're trying to humanize. I don't know if you saw the Rings of Power season 2. They try to humanize the orcs a little bit, and kind of make you look at them and think of refugees in Europe, and it doesn't make sense because, like, you're defeating your own point because the orcs are horrible people. So what are you saying there, Rings of Power? So they kind of go full woke, and they did this with Acolyte too, and Andor as well. The Acolyte I bring up because that chick is losing her mind over a season being canceled because apparently the right wing. This is their argument for Dustborn, Concord, the Acolyte, where they go a loud right wing on social media is talking is saying that these things aren't good, and it's this vocal opposition. And so you go, okay, so the right wing is so powerful that they're able to convince left wingers who hate the right wing and usually have opposition defiant disorder. Well, they'll just do the opposite of what the right wing says. But the right wing, the Phantom Menace types, the comics gate types on YouTube, Gary Nerdrotic is so powerful that he's able to, if he makes fun of the Acolyte, then the left wing will listen to him and won't watch it. That doesn't make any sense. And same with Dustborn and Conquered. One of those, Dustborn lost, I guess, $200 million. Why'd you put that kind of money into a diverse feminist game? What are you, some kind of istophobe? That doesn't work anymore. That doesn't get people to watch Acolyte Star Wars, and it doesn't get people to play these to pay to watch these things, because there's always alternatives to paying, if you know what I'm saying. So the argument is the right wing has such godlike powers, or these games and Star Wars are made for roughly the right wing people. So you're selling something to your audience that your audience doesn't want, which begs the question, why are you? Oh, well, we don't want the old white male audience. We want a new audience. Okay, fair enough. That's not a horrible business decision, as long as the new audience is present, is available, and is willing to spend money. So, like the female POC audience, I say that because Dustborn, Concord, and Acolyte have that, and I think they might even be fuzz bumpers, if you know what I'm saying. Wears comfortable shoes, Birkenstocks, and whatnot, though I do love my Birkenstocks. Are they fans of dystopian future video games and Star Wars? Oh, well, no. Okay, then why are you marketing something to people that... Because we just hate white men so much. Good luck with that. I hope you double down. Someone in the comments said a couple days ago, goes double down for Star Wars, for Sony, for all these people who are pushing this stuff. By all means, put more money into it until you finally go bankrupt. Anyway, so Rings of Power Season 2. It's a streaming show, perhaps you've heard of it, on Amazon, which is also famous for the Robert Jordan books, Wheel of Time, where everyone talks in breath, which is also diverse and obese. And everyone just looks looks gross. They look like you can smell them through the screen, is what I'm saying. But think of the food. Yeah, we have recipes. Okay. So they talk in those breathy whispers, and they want you to think things are important and have gravitas. And it might make sense to have gravitas if the blonde elf wasn't talking to a pox queen with a diverse kingdom. It's some kind of floating pile of garbage in the middle of the ocean. You mean England? In this, the England analogy is this diverse kingdom with a black queen, I think. And diversity. Yeah, they're all. So how did they arrive at this island without all deleting each other? We're not going to explain that. But Tolkien was pretty careful when he built his stories. I mean, it's like the world's most famous fantasy trilogy, where I hate fantasy, and I read Tolkien every couple of years, at least the 4 books of Tolkien. Every 3 years I'll go back and reread all 4 books because they're that good. Because the thing with fantasy is it's so overwritten. Like a fantasy book will be 500 pages, and I look at it and go, this should really be 250 pages. Somebody should get the hell out of this. They do a lot of world building. Anyway, so when you've got a diverse kingdom, it immediately takes you out of the story and into toxic left-wing anti-whiteism, and it's a hard wall that the viewer can't get beyond. You need butter to make a cream, a fluffy, soft crust. And if you don't have butter, the crust is just not right. It's something else. It's not the fluffy crust that you need. Oh, well, yeah, we're just going to substitute like coconut, but it's just not going to taste as good. It's not fluffy, and that's what the customer wants. They want that fluffy crust with butter or whatever. You know what I'm saying? It's like you need yeast to make the stuff rise. Otherwise, you have flat bread. It's like, well, yeah, but this is diversity. We don't value diversity or feminism. How many times do people have to tell you this? And maybe they're not as upfront as I am, but more people need to be very upfront and just look people in the eye and go, yeah, we've had enough of diversity and feminism. That's all cancer. We don't value it. If you value it, that's fine. You can go watch your Dustborn, your Acolyte, your Andor, your Concord. You can go play all these woke cancerous video games, but it's cancer to us. I mean, it's just monkeypox and AIDS, and it's just not selling. So don't get mad at the messenger. Anyway, so all the bad guys are, of course, blonde, which, what level of Weimar predictive programming are we on? Can we get a Lord of the Rings? And, elf ears. Oh, elf ears. So, let me guess, it's a blonde guy in a bar calling the pox, POC, the black guy, elf ears. Because I get it. It's like a 1950s diner, and he's calling him something else. Yeah, that's as subtle as a fucking tractor going down a hill. That's developmentally disabled. Amazon, just a light touch. Tolkien. This is not Tolkien. This is obviously this is not Tolkien. This is Amazon. Can we get a Lord of the Rings the way Tolkien intended it? Do the globalist parasites have to run everything through that Frankfurt School woke filter? No, of course you're not going to get Lord of the Rings. If you want Lord of the Rings, you got there's more than the original 4 books. People go off on the Silmarillion and all those other uncompleted tales and whatnot, which I have, and actually I got a book the other night. It's hold on, it's called The Dark Powers of Tolkien. About the importance of good versus evil in Tolkien, and when you take that black and white out of the story and you go to these modern shades of gray, people are really done with it. If someone wants the book after I'm done with it, you can hit me up on SubScribestar and I can mail it out to you. So these parasites infect everything with this woke mind virus. Peak European storytelling apparently is English. I mean, it's the language we're speaking, so we're going to analyze it instead of French or German or something. In the minds of these Hollywood vermin, English are the gods of stories, so it's their stories that have to be subverted and corrupted. Look at what they're doing. They're taking a fun, well-written story universe, a story by an Englishman. It's something that they can't create, because the story is based on European mythology and earlier fantasy works that Tolkien admits in interviews. He even took the name from some of the names from prior fiction to honor them. Shadowfax, for example, a story that, and the thing is, a lot of the earlier fantasy stories that Tolkien was kind of riffing off of were too fantastic. They were too much fairies and butterflies and magic dust, Midsummer's Night Dream. It was just too fluffy, and Tolkien took a that and made it more concrete and took a lot of the magic out of it and just made it an adventure story in a magic setting, kind of like that's why Terry Pratchett's books works, and he admitted that in the books themselves, where he takes the magic, most of the magic out of the books, because otherwise it's just people, it's hard to identify with people throwing fireballs at each other kind of things. Because the English are superhumans to the reptiles in Hollywood, the story has thousands of connections to history, to the European people, to the land that shaped the people, to their shared history. It's this like bright, glowing nexus point with all these dendritic connections out from it, and there's just tens of thousands of connections to other points. And the Bolshies and the Bolshi found family concept think that people are fungible. You're just a cog in a communist machine. You can sever all those connections and make a rootless, easily enslaved people who will fall for anything. And this is the predictive programming as they push this stuff in the Bolshi found family stuff in stories all the time. It's a uniquely European story, so when you see the Shire, the Hobbit village, you accept it because it's a fantasy version of a European village hundreds of years ago. And as I was walking the other night, I was thinking, okay, the way they put Afro-Hobbits and Afro-Elves in the story doesn't work at all because visually they look different. Some of the characters are fair skinned and some are dark skinned. It's like, well, how did they evolve together just like humans? We don't, that doesn't make any sense. But if you go, okay, the black audience loves Lord of the Rings. They have to be in it. They're just, it's a huge black population that loves Lord of the Rings. So what I would have done, the compromise, and it's a compromise, it's not the way to do it, is if you have foreign people, blacks, Indians, even Chinese, whoever, like all the Earth analogs, you have the same analogous to Earth. You go, oh, well, they came from far away. The black elves came to obviously the south, where there's more sunlight and whatnot, to join forces to defeat this new threat. The Chinese hobbits, their cousins, came from, you get it. I mean, that's the only way to make it work. Instead, they have it like, oh, no, we're all mixed up together. But the suspension of disbelief doesn't go that far. We accept that this is a Euro fantasy story, but it still has to be Euro, and you're taking away. Race matters to them, or I should say their race matters a lot to them, and they don't think it matters to us, but it does, and why wouldn't it? And it's like I say, this stuff doesn't come in a cultural vacuum. When there's hatred directed against a group of people, us, the people of the light, there's going to be a response as a group who are going to start to see ourselves as an identity and respond to this kind of stuff. As carefully as I can say it on social media. YouTube is big. And it was the thing is, the story was peopled obviously with English people, not with Africans, or Chinese, or Indians. That's why you accept the story, because there's a bunch of Irish over here and Scottish and Welsh and English and whatnot. It has the appearance of truth, and the books and the Jackson movies mostly made sense. People complain about the Jackson movies, but they would have been 6 hours long if the movies were made the way that people wanted them to be made, and that you just can't put people in the theater that long. So one of the reasons this is monkeypox and AIDS is the importance of the degrees of kinship and verisimilitude. And kinship is something that is deep down in our core for millions of years. And when they erase the European people from their own history, it's so jarring and offensive, even if it is in a fantasy setting, because your kin is your own family, then extended family, then race. So the English, for example, have several degrees of kinship just within the English people alone than the greater European family. But when they take a tribe of elves, which are supposed to be the Scandinavian people, and substitute in a sub-Saharan for a Swedish character, the suspension of disbelief hits a wall, because your mind is telling you, obviously, you're seeing propaganda. The blonde guy in the bar calling the black elf knife ears or something. It's like, okay, we get it. And it's funny. There's The Witcher had a scene where a blonde guy in a bar is being beat up by a black girl who's in an English pub bar setting. And in what's that movie with James Cameron, the Blue Aliens, There's a scene where a blonde guy in a bar is slapping around his girlfriend, and the guy in the wheelchair has to beat him up or something. Like, I don't watch that many movies, and it's weird that the three scenes I remember seeing have got all blonde guys being jerks. Wow, I mean, totally. Hey, Jodie Foster and whatever that movie. It's like, that didn't happen actually. Hey, John Grisham's book. Why'd you race swap the characters? And hey, Stephen King's book, The Long Mile or something. It's like, hey, it was a blonde serial killer. That's a statistical, almost impossibility. Why'd you do that, Stephen King, John Grisham? These people, James Cameron, these people make these. Why'd you swap out the reality? Oh, it doesn't matter. I just wanted to. John Grisham goes, I just wanted to explore it. Yeah, that's weird. That's weird. Anyway, or the Jodie Foster movie. Like, yeah, four white guys, huh? 4 white guys. Yeah, that didn't happen. Anyway, like, you have a hard time making YouTube videos. I know, it is a challenge. So they take a tribe of elves, which are supposed to be the Scandinavian people, and substitute in a black guy, and you can't do it. So they took Tolkien's world and they changed it to push their lizard agenda. Then the greatness of the story doesn't depend on the magic of the European people, but actually anyone can be European in this fantasy setting, which sounds really nice, but it's also not true, and it's not going both ways. They're not telling the story of Shaka Zulu with Swedish and Chinese people, because that would be absurd. Nobody wants to see that. Because tribe matters to them, but your tribe doesn't matter to them. And this is one of the stages of dehumanization on the steps to genocide, erasing you from your own stories. Tell the story of the Shogun and swap in European actors. People accept this globalist nonsense because these demons have been normalizing the most insane stuff for the past 80 years. That's the power of media propaganda, to turn the West into a globalist nightmare. The media prepares the mind by brainwashing you while you're young and susceptible. That BLT community, those people in dresses, they don't do their story hour for adults. They do it for children. If 40 years ago they showed you this new diverse Hobbit story, nobody would watch it because it wouldn't make any sense then or now. But with 40 years of programming, they can get people to accept it like sheep because they're afraid of being called istophobic. But those terms you've also been brainwashed to accept as valid because they don't mean anything. For example, the show has goals for females on screen, FaceTime and speaking time. They've got a checklist to follow. That's why it's so boring, because there are so many women on screen, and nothing is more boring than that. Because that's just genetically hardwired into us. Women are not the storytellers. They're not the center of attention. They can't be, because they have to. Their center of focus has to be in perpetuating the tribe and caring for the kids. So they've got their lizard values, and their movies reflect that. That's why everything is crap, because they're not making organic films. They're, by definition, making propaganda. If you have to follow a checklist, that's the definition of propaganda. You ask, well, why are there Afro-elves? They say, well, it's inclusion. But it defies logic and canon. The lizard value of inclusion conflicts with the original story and with what the audience's values are. The audience's values are in accord with the original story. So the parasites at Amazon are removing the artist's intent and substituting their own values to, in their mind, improve on Tolkien. That's the hubris we're dealing with. People who think they can improve on Tolkien, the greatest fantasy writer of all time. Somebody said admiring the visuals in the story is like admiring the font in the Satanic Bible. It's obviously a Larry Fink Wef show. It has women and men's roles, which take you out of the show. But to the woke crowd, there are no men or women's roles, because there's no men or women unless they need to pass the Bechdel test, and then they know what women are. Because they're lying to you. They don't even believe the things they're saying. They are the Frankfurt School cultural Bolsheviks. Men in males' roles are in those roles because men are not women. They're a discrete entity unto themselves. They have a set of parameters that define them, and they're suited for their roles. Same for women. These set of characteristics, yes, there's overlap and there's a spectrum, but you know what a man is and you know what a woman is, and you know what roles you want to see them in. And good storytelling doesn't try to get you to accept too much suspension of disbelief. You're already in a Hobbit setting. You can't race swap the characters. It's already enough. So when you see the female hobbits go on their adventure, It doesn't make sense because young women are valued for their fertility. That's why they're risk adverse. So women in the role of guard duty or soldiers, it just falls flat. Or rather, you can only have so many suspensions of disbelief. The main chick in the action role, which is in the books, is as far as you can go. Though she's 6'4" in the books, and I think this chick is, I don't know how tall. She's short, but that's fine. I mean, but you can't also make a black queen of a diverse island and Afro hobbits and Afro elves. It's just too much. And this, like, what does the race matter for? Well, if it didn't matter, you wouldn't have swapped them. In the stories, Tolkien was writing this big picture. Not everything had nuance. The orcs were an evil race of creatures. That was the role they played in the stories, but the globalists, they can't allow that because their goal is to brainwash you into thinking blonde man bad and diversity is great, even when obviously the opposite is true. So Amazon gives the orcs families who are probably refugees, who just want to immigrate and have a chance at a better life while they eat your children. Because they're using the show to push you to accept globalism, even as reality is showing us how evil it is. So the show has diverse casting on both sides, so there's not so much good and evil except for blonde men. They have to be evil, but everyone else can be mixed. So visually, both antagonists and protagonists look the same, and the viewer just doesn't have anything emotionally invested in the story. It's like Bank of America fighting Chase Bank country. It's like, who cares? Your soldiers a fortune. There's no blood and soil type of invested in the story, which is, the human reality for millions and millions of years is tribe. Because Lord of the Rings is about tribalism. You'd have been better off making all the good guys white and the orcs dark. That way you visually know who the bad guys and good guys are. Or the other thing I was thinking of is, if you wanted to sell this thing, license the rights out to China, they wanted to tell the story, it would work better if you made them all Chinese. That would work. Or if you're selling in Africa, just make them all black, and that would work, because those are still nationalist concepts. You're just swapping it out appropriate for the audience. But Hollywood is not nationalist in any capacity. They're globalists. So what they're doing is they do this. They swap it out, and the story just falls apart. Where the Black Queen has a white dad. So I guess they're mixed, and so now she's in charge of this island that's also mixed. But it's the problem that Stephen King's movie, The Dark Tower, ran into, where they're in some country, there's some town in the Old West, which is supposed to be a Clint Eastwood type of town, which is all going to be all white. But in the movies, it's all mixed. There's blacks and Asians and all mixed together. So you go, but they're clearly black, clearly Han Chinese. You go, oh, so they just mixed in this first generation, because after a few generations they'd all look alike. They'd just be kind of brown. Yeah, that's right. That doesn't. This is, again, the suspension of disbelief only goes so far. So they're good and evil. The story is telling you that they've been assigned that way, not because it's the core of their character. And it makes for a weak story because evil should be intrinsic. The orcs are bad and tools of Saruman, and you just keep moving the story along. The Black Queen in the mixed island village destroys the story as well, because you expect to see some Greek island with all the Greek people, or whatever the island's supposed to represent. Instead, you get some diversity checklist. So, and like, if you made the island all Arab, that would be fine too. That would work. It's some island off in the middle of, or Greek or Turkish or yes, even if it was Arab or something off in the middle of somewhere. It's like, this is a distinct group of people that you had to sail into. It's like, okay, that would be fine. They're not supposed to be of these other people. It's a race of man somewhere else, but you just can't mix them. And like, Hollywood is just about a diversity checklist. So you see this island, it's like, oh, so globalism already came to your society. It went from a nation of the Natal to a commercial zone, so who cares what you're fighting for? It's not your country anymore. Anyone can be part of the country just by being present, which is, obviously globalist propaganda, and it doesn't work in storytelling because it'd be more likely that the original people of the nation would just fight and delete the invaders, unless you're saying that this fantasy world is exactly like the dystopian present that is reality today. And the thing is, as the West is also headed for World War III to do some things, and this is in people's subconscious, they know war is imminent, and they know that the Rings of Power just doesn't make any sense. It's very astroturfed. It's a bullshit fantasy showing you how great their diversity is, but people look at the how it is carried out in the real world, and the show just kind of seems stupid, because it's obviously propaganda, and it bears no relation to Tolkien's original stories or original intent. And the Peter Jackson movies are there. The three, you can ignore The Hobbit, but the three Peter Jackson films are just such a shining example of he's tried to stick as close to the original artistic intent as possible of the Genesis, the god of the story, which is the writer, and Amazon is doing something much different. Anyway, I don't know if this is too far for YouTube. Did I say parasite too many times? YouTube doesn't usually like those colors, but we'll see. I'll upload it and I'll check the monetization, and if it spins for a long time, that's usually a bad sign. The videos that don't make it go to SubScribeStar, and they go to the Odyssey members section. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys all next episode.